Image is a podcast of Redemption Church located in Huntington, West Virginia for the purpose of equipping believers to fully engage culture in a theologically faithful way.
Hello, it's Brandon again, and this is part 2 of God's work in Impossibilities. And if you listen to the previous episode, which you should, if you haven't listened to part 1, please listen to part 1, because there I mentioned that I hoped that we would get Laura's take on the things that we discussed, and here she is, my wife Laura, and you may not know her because she's very introverted. So, Laura, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us who you are?
Hello, my name is Laura. I am Brandon's wife, as he said. We've been married for 16 years now.
Actually, it's 16 years yesterday, because yesterday was our anniversary.
Woohoo! We have 2 twin boys, Noah and Aiden, and I'm an RN. I work at St. Mary's, and
Previously at Hospice of Huntington.
Previously at Hospice of Huntington, almost 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And so you listened to what I had to say in part 1. Do you want to any thoughts that you have initially, or do you want to just go step by step and the kind of the same trajectory that I went in the first episode?
I kind of want to go the same trajectory, but I am glad that you're talking about this because I felt for a long time that I've wanted to talk about this, but I didn't really have a clear idea of who to talk to or when.
Mm-hmm. So when you say this, what do you mean by this?
Basically, just how God worked through our struggle with fertility, and then once we did get pregnant, all of the struggles that happened throughout.
Mm-hmm.
And how God basically really showed us more and more of himself throughout the whole process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so, well, if we're going to take it in the same pathway that we did, or that I did for the first episode, let's reorient ourselves. So the main discussion points were based upon Josh's final word on his 3 ending points, and the first was our impossibilities are where God does his best work. God's delays are not his denials. That was the second one, and the third one is when God intervenes, it is for his glory. And so for the first item, our impossibilities are where God does his best work, I opened with the fact that we went to multiple specialists. They told us that pregnancy was going to be difficult, and if by any chance if you got pregnant with twins, we'd have to selectively reduce or abort one. So let's start there. Tell us about what was going on with you at that point, and how did you feel when we got that news?
Well, so, yes, like you said, that was kind of the middle of the story. The beginning of the story is more that I remember when we were going into things that I kind of thought that we would have some trouble, but I didn't know how much trouble. And whoa, buddy, we had we had some trouble. I think by the time we got here and got to see Dr. Burns, he was our 4th doctor.
Technically our 5th.
Oh.
When you think about the concept that we were told it was impossible to have twins, and now that we have twins, I was mentioning in the previous episode, that's one of my, whenever I struggle in my faith, I think about this is a moment where, in my opinion, God definitely intervened in our situation, in our story, and shows that he's active not just in our lives, but in he does this every day. He does this for other people, not just us. And and to me, it's a reminder, and it strengthens my faith. So, do you have that same kind of reaction to this?
Oh, definitely. I think that just the way that we saw God move through the entire experience, I know it lasted over 5 years trying to get pregnant. And I know that yesterday you mentioned the bicornuate uterus, and that's kind of where the issue started, plus the fact that I was officially diagnosed with PCOS, which makes it more difficult to get pregnant as well. So we had multiple things going against us, and then so we started out with multiple obstacles. Then, of course, we're told that we couldn't have twins, and if we did, that it would be very dangerous, and like we said, would have to selectively reduce. And just the way everything played out, and of course, when we moved here, when we started with Dr. Burns, and it only took me 2 rounds of medication without anything else.
Mm-hmm. And do you remember what the plan of action was?
I mean, we weren't going straight back to IUI or IVF. He just kind of wanted to start from square one with, I think he had me on Femera. Mm-hmm. And then just gave me a very strict timeline for what days to do what. Mm-hmm. And that definitely did not work the first time that we tried it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, one of the other things, well, I guess we can say that the second component of the conclusions we discussed is God's delays are not his denial. So if it was up to us, we would have been, like 26-ish when we were starting a family. Because we moved to California. We were there for not yet a year, and we made the decision, like, yeah, let's start to build the family. And that obviously didn't happen. And, and then it ended up occurring, in our, early 30s, well, early to mid 30s, early 30s for you, mid 30s for me. And, our timeline was definitely different from the actuality. So when you think about when we did have kids versus when we initially wanted to have kids, tell me about your mindset about that.
Yeah, I mean, our timeline was completely different from God's timeline, obviously. I think that we decided to start trying when we did because we figured that was the best time age-wise for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, also, we at that point we had a lot of our friends. So so Laura and I, we met in Columbus. We were part of a church. Started off as we met in the college age group church, and a lot of our friends and peers, were having kids at that time, and so we thought, our friends are having kids. Let's be. And then even some of the people that we knew at our church in California, they were having kids. A lot of them were actually younger than us, and we're like, all right, now's the time.
I think for me, it wasn't that our friends were starting to have kids. I think I remember specifically having a conversation with my sister Alyssa at the beach. And she noticed that I was noticing babies everywhere.
Yeah.
And basically told me, you better watch out. That means that you're probably starting to get ready to want to have kids. And so I think that is when I kind of started thinking about it.
Yeah.
In more concrete.
Yeah. Well, I remember Laura's oldest sister, her oldest daughter is named Olivia. And when I started dating Laura, Olivia was, 2.5?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I just remember, like, even then, like, I thought we were gonna have a girl or multiple girls because pretty much all of the guys in my family end up having girls, and obviously, with your sisters, there's only been one boy produced, nothing but girls other than that, and so I was just expecting, all right, we're just gonna have like a mixed version of Olivia, and I thought that was just great because I loved our oldest. Well, I still love our oldest niece, Olivia. It's just that now she's a grown woman and doesn't hang out with us as much as she used to.
Well,
It doesn't help that we live 3 hours away.
I'm sure if we lived down the
Actually,
street, she'd be over here all the time.
Actually, as soon as we showed up for Thanksgiving, she basically stole you. She's like, Laura, let's go hang out, and you guys left.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Anyways, so very early on, I kind of, I switched pretty quick. I was the typical early 20-year-old guy that had no interest in kids, and then after dating Laura, I was like, let's do this kids thing. It'll be great.
And it has been.
Mm-hmm.
When it finally happened.
Yeah. But so, in what ways do you think that the way it turned out that God's timeline was infinitely better than what we initially planned?
Well, everything in hindsight is way clearer than in the present, but it would have been a mess if we'd gotten pregnant when we first started trying, because we had almost no support, comparatively speaking.
Mm-hmm.
And I know yesterday you mentioned how far apart we were working from each other traffic-wise and everything, and that would have definitely made it more difficult. And even, like, just with all the difficulties that we went through during the pregnancy, there was no way that we would have had that level of support, because I can't remember the amount of times that I called friends crying with all the what ifs and anxiety that I was having.
Yep. I remember good old Chris Bowers had to talk us down a few times.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm talking like even girlfriends.
Yep. Yeah. Why? Oh, I know. But before we get to that, let's talk about while we were getting pregnant, what were some of the difficulties? Because here's some things I did mention yesterday / the previous episode. One, in our difficulty in getting on the on-ramp to having kids, there was definitely a point where, when we went to like our house church, which is basically like our California church's version of a GOSCOM, it was, I definitely remember it would be very difficult for you sometimes to like, be around like some of the other kids or some of the other women that were pregnant. We had difficulties, like we were arguing, or we weren't seeing, eye to eye. We were definitely scrutinizing each other. We got to the point where when we were trying to figure out what was wrong, whether it was you or me, the answer was it was a little bit of both of us. What are the things that are trying to, getting in the way of sabotaging our physiology? We can talk about that, because I definitely think that those difficulties ultimately made us a better couple. So let's talk about that from your perspective.
Yeah, I mean, it forced us to have to work together, and to try not to blame each other too, which is pretty common when you're going through infertility issues. But I do recall at least getting into really one big fight over the scrutiny towards each other.
What was one of the biggest fights we got into?
I said something dumb.
I honestly can't remember it.
I think I said something along the lines of, I'm glad it's not just me that has something wrong with them.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I don't think you liked that very much. But I also don't think I meant it the way you took it.
Yeah. I thought you were going to go into... so there is a point when I was trying to make the Olympic rowing team, and I remember you read some literature thinking that like excessive working out like
No.
basically decreases like sperm count, and then you were trying to convince me to quit rowing, and I'm like, Laura, it's 2 weeks from the national championships and
Well,
national team testing.
yeah.
And I remember,
Yeah, there was that, and
Yeah.
also just, yeah.
yeah. I will say there was a medical issue I had that was definitely contributing to it. I had a surgery that definitely well, based upon the metrics, like it helped like only by like 5%, but if that 5% is what got us the twins, then it was totally worth it.
Yeah, and as far as how else it strengthened us, I mean, just I know with my relationship with God and the growth that He was kind of forcing me into, or maybe it wasn't forced.
Yeah.
Maybe it was. I don't know. But I think by the end of it, I started to come to accept that it might not happen. Mm-hmm. Like when we moved here and it still wasn't happening.
Yeah, because then we were looking into adoption.
I don't remember looking like super duper into adoption,
Well,
but
no, so this was maybe like March or April. So this is right before the vacation with your family, where we most likely conceived sometime around that time. So we didn't really get that far.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I definitely remember, I remember sitting in what used to be the Holiday Inn at your second interview with Marshall, and just thinking, it might not happen. We were at breakfast, and I don't remember that we were talking. I just remember thinking to myself that it might not happen and that it would have to be okay.
Yeah, but that was also a difficult time for other reasons, because you had some other health issues going on that kind of like spiked right before we moved.
Yes.
So
That would have been awful. Yeah, I was thinking about that earlier today because I was so stressed when we were getting ready to move here. I was having, I think, some psychosomatic symptoms from my stress and basically diagnosing myself with autoimmune diseases. Well, I'm still saying that would have been awful timing because I was a mess. And that messiness did carry over into us being here for probably a few months until we'd gotten settled in both of our jobs and unpacked, and we're starting to get to know people and finding a church. And even as I'm talking about all those things, I'm thinking it would have been terrible to have a newborn and all of that.
So speaking of, so you kind of hit on the support. So you mentioned this earlier. You just mentioned a little bit now. So how much support did we have in California?
Well, I had a couple really good friends. Now just one, but yes.
So yeah, because realistically, here's for people that have never lived in Los Angeles or the area. So we had so we lived in Arcadia, which was close to Caltech, and that's where I was working. And then Laura was working, depending on the phase of our lives there, either in West LA, which was like 2.5 hours away, or somewhere around like the South Central area, because she would see patients
East LA.
there. And then that would be like absolute minimum 40 minutes to like an hour and a half, depending on traffic. Anyways, like, so she was kind of spread out. A lot of our friends, so we were going to a church in Pasadena. We did not make that many strong connections. These were the kind of friends where, like, if you were having a party, maybe they'd come over, but if something was really happening, we would never see them. And the people that we could really depend on were very few, like maybe like 3 or 4 people. But we had the time barrier of they lived 20 miles away, which would mean 1.5 hours to 2 hours, and so we didn't really have a ton of support. Not the kind of people that had the experience of what it would be like to have kids, because they were all kind of younger. So would you agree with that?
Yes, except for Yuck, because one time she let me bring all 3 of our pets to her house so we could get our house fumigated.
And that was one of the times I was gone for like a rowing trip.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, now fast forward to now. How's our support now?
I don't think we've ever had as much support as we have now.
Yeah.
I mean, like you said, there was time during the pregnancy after we found out that it was twins. Actually, I shouldn't even say a time because it was from the beginning. From the first ultrasound, Dr. Burns said that it was a 50% chance that Noah would be reabsorbed. Just because he was so small from the beginning.
He's still small now, but man, he's feisty.
I know. I love that little guy.
You guys should have seen him at his basketball game today. So, but it's not. So we have, we probably have the best friends we've had. I mean, we had some good friends in Columbus. They know who they are, but I mean, when it comes to we've never had this many people that we could, we would consider ride or dies. And if you don't know what that means, these are the people that are going to go the extra length for you. I mean, let's just say we've never felt safe to give keys out to people. And we have several friends. It's if something were to happen, we would trust them 110% to just come into our house and grab our kids. So, and some of these people, in these times when you were in the hospital, would be there with you. I was thinking about the time when Noah had to go to Lexington. Abby was there with you.
That was a mix of people. Because when I was in the hospice, when I was working hospice, I wasn't in hospice. I had a handful of really good friends who were huge supports to us. They even helped us paint the baby's nursery. But yeah, they kept showing up for us, and then Abby showed up and brought me food.
Abby Dickerson.
And I'll never forget that because I remember I'd been alone with Noah all day in the ER. So I think that we went there right around when my workday was supposed to start. And he had to be put on high flow oxygen, and he was being given antibiotics, and they didn't really know exactly what the plan was for him because I guess that RSV season was horrible.
It was bad.
And I remember before anybody was able to come that I overheard one of the nurses saying that there was a baby being intubated in the next room with RSV. And so, of course, my mind was starting to go to not great places. And Abby came, and I'll never forget this, Abby, but I asked you if you thought that Noah was going to die, and you said, I don't know. And I know later I apologized for asking you that because that was not a good question to ask somebody, but I just appreciate you answering that honestly and also just being there. I will never forget that. And also that you brought me food because I hadn't eaten it all that day.
Yeah, and it was, man, that was a definitely horrible time because we were instructed specifically not to bring Aiden because the hospital was so full of RSV cases. They're like, you do not bring your healthy child here. And I remember I was like, can I just drop off food? Because I remember I was calling in and they were like, you leave your child away. Like if you can have someone watch your kid, and that was a no no because I remember the ambulance came to take Noah, and then they were like, what? How old were they? They weren't yet 2, were they?
21 months,
yeah,
22 months.
Yeah, so I remember the ambulance took Noah away.
You're getting your stories confused. That wasn't the time that they came to get Noah in the ambulance.
Oh, yeah. No, that was the next year RSV.
Yes,
yeah.
I remember I took him to see Dr. Brownfield, and he
said the ER.
Go right to the ER.
Yeah.
And he prayed for him, and I was impressed by that, coming from a place where no one would have prayed for anybody.
Brownfield, we miss you.
Yes.
We still got your brother, though.
Yes. We're
So
again getting off topic.
This also shows you how often our kids were in the hospital specifically for RSV, because it happens so many times we're getting our stories mixed up. And multiple times with ambulances.
Yeah.
So,
But I will say,
Yeah.
thank God for maintenance inhalers, because Noah has remained out of the hospital since we got started on those, knock on wood.
yeah.
But anyway,
But every one of those times, some of our friends were there with us.
and every one of those times, if our friends weren't there at the time, God provided us with some really good provider like Dr. Lacani. So, yes, at the beginning we were told that Noah had a 50% chance of being reabsorbed. So we basically had to get people started praying on that right away. And Noah, being the feisty, stubborn guy he is, and God really being faithful in that in that moment, allowed him to grow, but not without continued difficulties, since I was diagnosed with gestational diabetes very early on. I failed the sugar tests so quickly and badly that I wasn't even invited back for a second one. So I had to watch everything I ate like a hawk. And then I don't remember at what point we had to start. I think it was right after Christmas that we had to start going in for monitoring 3 times a week, because that's when Noah's reverse flow really started getting bad. And then there was the time that I had to be in the hospital twice in a 2-week period over the weekend. And they thought that they were going to have to induce me the first time, because they were starting to prep me with the steroid shots to get the boys' lungs ready. But again, we had people coming in support us in the hospital. I remember Josh came with Sarah, and I don't remember if anybody else other than my mom was there for those. I don't know that we really told anybody other than Josh that we were in the hospital, actually.
Well, that first time.
But it was definitely a scary situation. Basically, God used it to really force me to have to control my anxiety.
How did this remind you of the warnings we had from those early clinicians saying that there's no way we'd be able to deliver, or that you'd be able to deliver twins? So in those moments where we were told Noah has a 50% survival chance, Noah is not developing, or his lungs aren't developing, or the times where, Aiden's not breathing, when they were doing like the breathing checks, and then you're in the hospital, like did any of those old fears come up? Or
I think actually that God kind of protected me from that, because I don't remember any of those prior conversations coming up from when we were seeing the other doctors in California. So again, I think that was God really protecting me, because I think I had enough anxiety just with the day in and day out of not knowing what was going to happen. I remember coming out of every single visit at the perinatal center, and every time they would let me head off to work instead of sending me straight to the hospital, being like, okay, we got another couple of days that we've been bought. Don't have to worry about delivering early now. And then the night before the next visit, the dread would just come back, because things were so up in the air. But like I said, God really used those times to force me to trust him, basically, because I honestly Well, I know I had other choices than to trust him, but it was either that or just drowning anxiety and fear.
Yeah. Okay, so the third conclusion, or third item of the conclusions, was when God intervenes, it is for his glory. So so in this, what are the specific moments that you believe God intervened?
I think he was intervening the entire time, because there were so many things that were unlikely to happen or that were more likely to have bad outcomes if they happened. And all of those things happened.
Yeah.
We got pregnant with twins, just like the other doctors were concerned we would. I had a bicornuate uterus, which added more complications. I had gestational diabetes that caused more complications, and PCOS and all these other things. And yet God was still working to develop two healthy twin boys, despite all of the obstacles and all of the scary things that happened.
Yeah. And what about that last scary thing that happened?
Well, I mean, that was kind of a busy day of scary things, because remember
Well, what's the busy day?
when I was induced, I think is what you were
Yeah,
talking about.
Yeah.
About how
Yeah, just want to make sure everyone's on the same page.
about how I had been able to tolerate laying on my back my entire pregnancy, and then
that's not what.
well, I know, but that was also still scary because
Okay.
I was cutting off my own blood supply and the twins' blood supply, so that wasn't a good way to start out my induction. I remember you seemed pretty scared because you couldn't wake me up.
Well, well, explain what happened.
Well, I was just laying in bed like I normally would have, not
And?
even fully flat.
And
And
you
I
rolled
started to feel really weird and funky, but I couldn't put a finger on it. And I didn't know I should probably move off of my back because I'd been able to tolerate it. And then next thing I remember is hearing your very distant voice calling my name. And then Chris Powers came in and basically saved my life and Aiden and Noah's lives. Yay, Chris Powers.
Yeah, probably not but like when they were coming out. What was the last surprise?
Well, as you said yesterday, Noah came out like a champ, head down, as one does. And I always just say Aiden couldn't stand to be without his brother, and so he kicked his way on through with both feet, and that is the worst way for a baby to present themselves. Because once the shoulders are out, as I understand it, the cervix just thinks it's done with its job, and it closed around Aiden's neck. So Dr. Yost and Dr. Carr and everybody had to get him out safely and resuscitate him. And
Well, yeah, the important thing to mention is that, so it clamped around his neck, and by the time he got him out, he was not breathing.
Yep, he was not breathing. And I was not aware any of this was happening, other than I probably should have noticed no one was crying, but I think I was just clinging onto that very skinny table for dear life. And anyway, yep, Aiden had to be resuscitated, and then they went to the NICU for 19 days.
Yeah, which was honestly the least stressful part. By the time we got to that, thankfully they were just feeder growers. So we just basically, it was actually kind of fun at that point because we got to feed them when we were there. They had their little NG tubes, and we basically had these syringes, and we basically lived in the NICU for 19 days.
Mm-hmm.
Kudos to the nurses, because there was a point where we probably started smelling, and I remember like, you guys can go home and shower and clean up, and
Yeah.
then we did. But so we basically just got to cuddle them for 19 days.
They were so cute with their
Yes.
little NG tubes.
Okay. So as you said, God was intervening in the whole situation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, obviously, he kind of defied all the odds in that we have two pretty darn healthy, almost 8-year-old boys, when it was not necessarily likely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And through that, he's also taught me how to trust him more in other areas of life. Because when I look back and I think, well, he got us through that whole time. Of course, he's going to get us through whatever this thing is that, is in front of us.
Yeah. So what do you have to say to other people that may be going through something similar? So I was mentioning how, there's a lot of different types of impossibilities that God can intervene in. In our case, it was, the pregnancy and starting a family, and this is just one of many different types of things that a individual could be stuck in a holding pattern where they're waiting for something to happen and they're praying for God to do something. What do you have to say to the people that are in a situation like this?
Don't give up on asking God for whatever it is that, that you're wanting. But also in between asking God and the expectation and the hope, listen too, because there may be things that God's wanting to communicate with you, and teaching you through that hardship that you wouldn't learn any other way.
Mm-hmm.
I think the biggest takeaway for me, even in my day-to-day life now, when there are things that I'm having to trust God in and I just have to wait for, God's always working, and he always has his plan, even when it looks like he's not doing anything. And it's always going to work out for our best interest if we let it, basically. As long as we don't try to take control of things ourselves. Some of the things that I used to help me through those situations, and those anxieties were songs. And I think that this one line in Prince of Peace says it best. Oh, be still my heart and know that you are God. And I think that that kind of encapsulates everything, because if we're just able to steady our own hearts and look at God, no matter what our situation is, you just kind of know that things are going to be okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And that is a song we listened to a lot during the pregnancy, so much so when our kids were born and they came home and we played it one day and their heads swung around like, we know this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think to add on to that final thought is that, we can tell them this story too and have them listen to the songs that got us through. And
they know these songs.
Yes. Yeah. And I'm hoping that it is helping to build a foundation for them to know that, God was so faithful to them, even in my womb.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because he had to carry them.
Mm-hmm.
If you've enjoyed this podcast, you can hear more of Image on iTunes or wherever you get your podcast at, or at redemptionwv.com/image, where you can also find any resources mentioned in our podcast and links to follow us on social media. And you can join the conversation by contacting us with any questions, feedback, or topic suggestions. Also, Please rate our podcast and write a review at wherever you get your podcast, and that will help us ensure that this content gets to more people.